spook easily startled.
Have you ever explored the depths of fear? Have you ever wondered what depravity dwells within the imagination of a storyteller that prompts them to exhume horrors untold and expose those horrors to unsuspecting audiences? Some are repulsed, and some are shaken. However, there are those who are invigorated. So to those demented souls, we invite you to journey inward into the dark bowels of human imagination. Press play, and you will discover what's in the podcast.
And welcome back to another edition of What's in the Podcast, our first official podcast of 2025. We are not yet under fascist rule yet, but we are approaching it. So we are going to keep doing this until they stop us, and we are going to start this time remembering simpler times, those simple times where we would walk the aisles of our local video store, hide from our parents because deep down they knew we would be going into the horror section, because in the horror section, for the longest time, as close as we could ever get was looking at those kick-ass cover arts that was on every single VHS that graced the shelves. And that is the subject we are talking about today. Today we are reflecting on the potency, the power, the sometimes even unnerving nature of the movie poster, and in particular the horror movie poster, and how even in some humorous examples, how sometimes the poster is even better than the movie that it's advertising, or sometimes it undersells. But in any case, we are going to explore why, well, I'm going to say it, and of course, admittedly, it's a horror podcast, so we're kind of biased, but yeah, why the horror movie poster is the best kind of poster for every other movie. So, but to discuss this alone, as usual, would be indeed a self-indulgent affair. So, of course, I brought back our good friend JT Smith, previously of our vampires discussion and our X discussion. Welcome back.
Hello.
Hey. So, oh, this is one I've been aching. Well, this, and by extension, what we have in store later on, I have been excited to talk
Yes.
specifically with you about this one because we have things to say on this particular topic. So, how do you feel on the topic about not just about posters, but of movie advertising on the whole?
Well, movie advertising is very near and dear to my heart because that is what I moved all the way across the country to LA to do for a living. I'm currently not in that at the moment, but I am a video editor, and
Mm-hmm.
I went up through the ranks as receptionist, assistant editor, machine room mop, all that stuff in places that made movie trailers. And I've worked at a lot of places that worked on some of the greatest horror films, also some of the worst horror films. Um, and it is my passion. I love marketing for these kinds of things. Currently, I'm working in just video games, so I make trailers for video games. I'm always hoping to get a horror video game to come across my
Yeah.
desk. Um, but yes, I used to work at a place that is known as the horror movie spot for trailers. It's called Buddha Jones. I was an assistant editor, but I worked with Bill Neal, who is a legendary name in the industry. He is the guy to cut the greatest horror movie trailers ever. So I feel blessed that that is part of my history. But yeah, no, I'm just a nerd who loves advertising, and like you, some of my fondest memories are getting lost in the blockbuster looking at the VHS covers.
And even sometimes looking at those covers going, I ain't touching that because that just looks so freaking disturbing. In fact, I'm lamenting that I couldn't find it. I think it's in the wash. I have my shirt, which is like completely comprised of horror movie posters.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, and I feel like I'm missing, yeah, missing. I feel naked right now. But in any case, speaking on the related topic for everyone listening, if you're on just strictly listening to this in podcast form, you may only get half the power of this one because we will be coming up with great visual examples of ones uh, that will kind of reflect our discussion. So for the full brunt, definitely watch us on the YouTube version. So that's an advance warning. But I think a lot of people will also have a bit of nostalgia towards horror to know precisely what we're talking about, and we will describe a lot of these in immense detail. So I suppose the first big topic of discussion is, what do you think it takes to, well, what do you think makes horror in particular so special when it comes to advertising the movie, like what that makes the poster so potent?
Especially when it comes to posters, I mean, the magic of a good poster is the art of the tease. And I think the best posters are the ones that you don't even know what's going on. What is this advertising? What is that a photo of? I don't know what this is about, but it's an image that is stuck in my head now. Um, I'm trying not to give examples yet because I know we're gonna
Yeah,
get to
we'll get
those.
there.
We'll get to those. Um, but it's when horror is just that genre that it is meant to capture you on the surface level. You know,
Yeah.
it is all about the imagery and the very first feeling that that imagery evokes. It's not, drama. You're going to want to sit down and saturate in it, and then you fall in love with the story and the meaning and the characters. And I'm not saying that stuff does not exist in horror. I'm not one of those people, but horror is all about that first reaction. And
Yeah.
to me, when it comes to a poster, a movie poster, it just doesn't get better than grabbing someone's attention for the first time than with a one sheet.
Oh yeah. And a lot of people have complained, especially in recent years, that the art of a great poster has kind of gone by the wayside. And I will say in popular media, especially like stuff with Marvel or something like that, that usually just tend to rely on a splash page with just the cast
Yeah.
on it. Or sometimes they'll rely on just the image of an actor. I've even seen ones where it's just face. And it's like,
Yeah.
what is that going to tell us?
Yeah.
And yet, but yet, despite all that, when you look at all the posters for great horror, for horror, not even great horror films, it's just, but horror films still seem to have that mojo where, like, even some of the lesser ones have a good understanding of what makes a poster that makes people want. Even some of the lesser fare that came out this year, stuff like Night Swim and Imaginary. Say what you will about the films, but I will say the posters did the job to get people to go, intriguing. I'm going to
Yes.
go see this. Yeah, from my perspective, I think their first job is to tantalize us with the prospect of us seeing things that we are terrified to see. But yet it's that classic train wreck scenario. We don't want to stare, but you don't want to look away kind of thing.
Hmm. Hmm.
And I definitely feel if there's one genre that allows you to play with that idea, I think it's definitely horror. Now, I suppose now for this one, I did a good amount of research. Now, for everyone at home watching us on YouTube, one bit of required reading is Michael Gingold's Ad Nauseam, which is a wonderful collection of movie posters as shown in newspapers from the 70s going all the way to the 80s. And it is eye-opening to see. Actually, it's kind of crazy some of the stuff they got away with back in the 70s, even.
Oh, I bet. I
Oh,
bet.
yeah. I mean, off the top of my head, I'd say like probably one of the most audacious posters I saw was freaking I Spit on Your Grave.
Oh,
It's a
yeah.
classic. It has a bold image of just a woman's the back, basically pure exploitation classic. Woman's butt holding a knife, but you have an amazing tagline saying like they did these horrible things to her and she did these terrible things to them and no jury would convict her
Hmm.
kind of thing. So only in horror will they have stuff like this that I feel like they're able to get away with it because it's horror.
I It's funny that you bring that one up because I do believe that a tagline, it really goes a long way to make your poster stand out. So it's not just the image. And I mean, what you're
Mm,
talking about is you have this insane image that you're already like, wow, I feel like I shouldn't be looking at this, but I want to look at it. And then you read
yeah.
that and it's like, what the hell is this about? Okay, I'm in. And you still don't know what's going on, but now you're scared and excited. And I love the way taglines go with the imagery of posters. And yeah, I mean, I think horror gets away with a lot of things because the point is they want to shock you to bring you in.
Make them feel like they're watching something they probably should never see, or just, and even, of course, I also got to laugh at the posters that are so good that they're better than the movie they're advertising
Oh
sometimes.
yes.
And we will definitely talk about some of those today. So I feel like so for to describe the ebb and flow, what we're going to go through today, both you and I have taken the time to compile our own personal list of posters that really kind of do the job,
Mhm.
that represent what, represent horror in terms of advertising goes. And sometimes not just one example, sometimes it's an entire franchise, sometimes it's even a movie that deceives you into thinking it's a great movie, but it's the fact that the advertisement captured your imagination and made you go, I need to see that. So
Yeah.
I think we'll kind of do a, actually, let's kind of do, since we kind of started talking about it, let's talk about taglines at the beginning right
Oh,
there, just because honestly that's kind of a fun thing to kind of lead into our examples. I mean, sometimes with a tagline, it can either be, dramatic, or sometimes if they understand the movie they're advertising, the tagline could be just as tongue in cheek as the movie itself. And I know you and me would definitely agree on this one, but off the top of my head, pieces.
hands down, it's my favorite. My favorite tagline, and especially paired with that poster,
Yeah.
I just it doesn't get any better than that.
Yeah, it's exactly what you think it is.
Yes, it's this poster of just like a metal bin, like a garbage bin or something, and there's
Mhm.
body parts piled in it
Yeah.
and like some blood. And the tagline, it just says it's exactly what you think it is. The
Yeah,
movie's
and
called
just the title of
Pieces.
the movie, Pieces. And I think a
I just
chainsaw's in the poster too. It's like,
yes. Oh,
yeah.
it's just one of my favorites.
Oh yeah, no, I've come to appreciate Juan Piquer Simone's just laissez-faire attitude. He's like saying, "Listen, you're here to see a movie about people getting diced up and shit and watching
Yes.
all that." Yeah, this movie is, yeah, I'm sure they just said, you know what, I don't need to waste time. Sometimes I wonder if they just brush it off, and in that laziness ends up creating genius anyway, like accidentally creating genius. And to me, that tagline is just pure like, but it's exactly what you think it is. Just write that on there.
It's so
And they
good.
did, and they ran with it, and it worked.
I
So,
was at a convention just a couple of years ago, and there was a booth selling big fuzzy blankets. That was that poster
ah,
with the tagline.
oh,
And it's still one of my biggest regrets that I didn't buy it.
yeah.
Oh,
It's kind of blows my mind like how some of the iconography of pieces has come through. I mean, actually, there's a company that does amazing jigsaw puzzles. Well, they did one of the actual jigsaw puzzle from pieces.
oh, okay. Okay. Oh, that's
Yeah.
cool.
Oh yeah. The nudie one. And I think it has little blood
Naked
splatters all
lady.
over it.
Hmm.
Yeah, naked lady.
The very first Halloween, which I was also going to talk
Mm,
about as one of my favorite movie posters, because I think that
yeah.
imagery is just so iconic and it's such an interesting thing that the artist came up with, and I hate that I can't think of the artist's name at this moment. But
Yeah.
the tagline, "The night he came home," and they capitalize he. And there's just
Hmm.
something, and the picture you just see this the knife that looks like a jack that goes into a jack-o'-lantern.
Yeah.
It's called Halloween. So you have no idea who is he, but it's capitalized, so it must be important.
It must
And
be someone, and you see, and with the implication of a knife, that tells
yes,
you that this guy's not here for candy. This guy's here for
yes.
something else. I'm not sure if you noticed it. If you actually really look at, you're right. That poster is wonderful because there's so many subtleties, especially
Hmm.
if you look at the fist of the hand. The
Hmm.
fist of the hand actually looks like the profile of a face screaming.
Yeah,
If you
yeah.
look at that, it is so, there's levels to that poster. I don't think people, even diehard Halloween fans, I'm sure have not noticed it, but that is, and that poster is so standout. I've actually seen, I think Trick or Treat Studios actually sells a replica of that weird ass knife
Oh
from the
wow.
poster,
Cool.
just so people can recreate that knife from the poster. I was like, but yeah,
I
you're right about
feel
that.
so dumb. This is the first time that I'm using this blanket and not my poster blanket of the first
Hey,
Halloween. I
hey,
could have had it
don't
right
be
behind
don't
me.
don't be ashamed of Silver Shamrock. Yeah. Hey, you know what? I mean, even Halloween 3 has a wonderfully cryptic poster.
It's
Yeah.
interesting. That
And
one bugged me though as a kid.
Well, it definitely didn't feel like the prior two. But the other thing I will say, just actually as a kind of nice companion to the night he came home, that one had a tagline, "The night no one comes home."
Oh, I
Yeah.
forgot about that tagline. That's genius.
Oh yeah.
That's really good.
Actually, I remember the first time I ever saw the trailer, they rode on that tagline,
Hmm.
and that made me go like, "Ooh, what do they mean by that?"
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, what do they mean? I mean, I guess they wanted to make sure they're still tying to the Halloween franchise loosely, but yeah, that's the power of a good tagline to let people know this is still a Halloween franchise, but obviously a different game. I remember one time I heard this one and it's on the poster, it's repeated, but even when I watched the original trailer, I remember renting this movie, not
Hmm.
wanting to watch it when I rented it, and I didn't until way later, until I had to for our essay on SA. Last House on the Left.
Oh,
The tagline on that one in the trailer and even in the movie in the poster, to avoid fainting, keep repeating, "It's only a movie, only a movie, only a movie." And it's like
good.
that was powerful for me. Like right, I rented it a long time ago because I wanted to watch all the stuff on Bravo's 100 Scariest Movie Moments list.
Hmm.
And I was like, okay, I'll give this a go. But then that trailer was just so unpleasant and so unnerving. And then that reverberating tagline just kept going in my head. And I'm like going, I don't know if I'm ready for this. I don't know if I'm ready for this. So I didn't watch it until like decades later.
That's amazing. I mean,
Yeah.
that's a tagline that did its job. There's just something I find so endearing and witty about the taglines that break the fourth wall like that
Yeah.
are talking about this as an experience, as a film. I love those that are like, we're not pulling you into the world. We're letting you know this is an experience for you. This
Yeah.
isn't just a story we're telling you. You're going for a ride. And
Hmm.
yeah, just like Last House on the Left. I love those.
Yeah. And actually, a good recent example of actually with a kind of a political subtext to it was Nia DaCosta's Candyman, where the tagline, just pure and simple, is say my name.
Yes. Yes.
And if you and sure, for Candyman fans, they think like, okay, they're just talking about Candyman. And it's like, no, that's the
Yeah.
especially when you realize that Nia DaCosta's Candyman is about the idea of racial injustice consistently happening over and over again, almost cyclical.
Yes.
That slogan was actually paired. I remember in Black Lives Matter protests, that phrase was used, associated with pretty much every black person who had ever been killed due to pretty much police injustice.
Yeah.
And they would say their names. So they used that tagline as a means to associate with this particular Candyman because it was tackling that subject matter.
Yeah. That's a great one.
Though I will say a couple though that we just have to bring out, just because I would be crime if I didn't.
Hmm.
One, because of I should have known about this tagline before watching the movie, because I did not realize the movie was a comedy when I first watched it, was Reanimator.
Oh,
The
what's that again?
tagline on the tagline of the poster is, "Herbert West has a good head on his shoulders and another one on his desk."
That's right.
I should have realized that this was a comedy, but I had not seen the poster prior to watching the movie. And because I had to do one per podcast, basket case, the tenant in room 7 is very small, very twisted, and very mad.
Yeah.
But the ultimate one that to me, I think the tagline is so good that I think to me it sums up the entire subgenre of a slasher,
Mhm.
is Texas Chainsaw Massacre, where it's who will survive and what will be left of them. We have delayed it long enough, so let's go ahead and bat back and forth what we consider to be the quintessential posters. So you are my guest, so you go first.
It's hard to think about horror movie posters without the first one coming to mind for me is the original Evil Dead. There's just something, first of all, it's just that blue background that
Hmm.
immediately your eyes are going to go to it because it's this bright color. There's a lot of this color. So like that's what you look at. And then you see this woman just coming up. It looks like from the ground maybe, but you're not really
Yeah.
sure if it's the ground because again, it's just all blue and she's got her hand up and someone's choking her and I love that poster. I think
Yes.
it's so simple and eye-grabbing and yeah.
I always figured she was being pulled into the ground by something, or just
Yeah.
something was coming up from the ground to like torture her. So like, yeah, that's pretty damn pretty damn effective. Yeah, I mean that's pretty ironically the thing though if you want to know the thing that pushed that movie over the cliff as far as gaining a reputation was when they added Stephen King's blurb to it.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's I have that poster hanging in my office right now, and it's the one with his little
Yeah,
quote.
the most ferociously original horror film I've ever seen in years,
Yes.
kind of thing. And Bruce Campbell to this day has still never met Stephen King.
Really?
Yeah, he's openly said I went to go see a Q&A with him, and he said, "Yeah, that blurb pushed the movie over the cliff. It got all the attention, and when we never got a chance to thank him, and he's like, where do you find Stephen King?" I just screamed, "Maine."
Yeah, well, you're not wrong.
One that I loved, and actually this was very much a normal thing that happened especially with low budget horror. Well, this was a Charles Band movie. So Charles Band, the one thing that man was especially great with was knowing the importance of a poster and knowing how bold a
Mhm.
great image is in order to sell a movie. Uh, Even though the script I think had been pre-existing, I think the thing that motivated them was the fact that they created this poster and the image on the poster was so good that he told Stuart Gordon, "No, you need to make sure this in the movie is dolls."
Yes.
Yeah. Just and I remember now this is one of the ones, and this is the reason why I put it on my favorites, because this one haunted me as a kid. Like in the days even before Blockbuster, when I was walking the mom and pop shops, and I saw that one just with the little doll holding its eyes like that. That was a big old nope for me. Like I was like, I am not touching that movie. I don't know what's in it. I don't care what's in it. But
Absolutely.
yeah, but
That's definitely one of the earliest memories that I have of looking at horror VHS covers as well. Yeah, that
yeah.
one's always jumped out at me.
And again, you don't know. It's that unknown. You don't know what's in it. And there's a little part of me really sad that I didn't get a chance to watch a lot of these when I was younger, because
Hmm.
I have a feeling just my imagination would have gone into overdrive,
Yeah.
especially with dolls. I mean, and for everyone, if you want to know all my feelings on dolls, just go back to our podcast episode we did on it, where I did with Ivory's Littles. Uh, all my feelings on that movie, I just adored, and that poster, I will say, perfectly summed up the movie. It's eerie. It's kind of you don't know what to make of it.
Hmm.
Yeah, it has a nice gothic edge to it, but and honestly, because it sets you up to think one thing, you're sucker punched when you're actually watching the movie and you discover it actually has actually kind of a whimsical gothic fairy tale
Yeah.
kind of edge to it. So the poster really does a great job priming you for what you think you're going to see, and then you end up getting, and it's not so much you don't get the opposite of that, you get more than you bargained for.
Okay.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
think that's
absolutely.
why. Yeah, I think that's why that poster really, really works for me. And again, the fact that Charles Band made sure that that poster, that image is burned into our brains, and that he told Stewart, "No, you got to make sure that there's a scene where that happens."
Yeah.
And he was right. He was 100% right. So that's one of mine.
I love
Okay.
that they then had to add the scene to the movie because the poster looks so
Oh
good.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
awesome.
exactly.
I
Now Charles Band understand. That's I think the reason why a lot of his major franchise like Puppet Master and all that. I think that's
Mhm.
why he thrives so hard is because he understands the value of iconography.
Yes. Yes. I wouldn't say it's one of my favorites, but a big shout out is for the same reason I remember the Dead Alive movie poster. That's just the
Yeah.
woman opening her mouth and there's like a
Ah.
corpse face in there. As a
Yes.
little kid, that VHS cover scared me so much, but I always
Yes.
had to go look for it. I don't know why. Like every time I would go, and I remember too, it was the mom and pop video store before we had Blockbuster. And every time I had to walk by and look at it, and then immediately I'm like, oh, I'm terrified. I'm gonna have nightmares. But that
Yeah.
poster,
And that one deceives you because you go and you finally do watch the movie.
yeah.
And of course, the movie's just this wild
Oh yeah.
ride. It's like, yeah. Then you go back to that poster, look again, you're like, that's a really silly poster.
Yes.
It's a
Absolutely.
how's the tiny zombie head in her mouth? And you look at her eyes like, kind of
Yeah.
thing. You realize that's a funny poster.
It's
The
so
whole,
good.
the whole, mood and tone takes a complete shift opposite. Fun bit of trivia. Now, for most people who know, the movie's called Brain Dead. It was originally called Brain Dead. They did not change the title for the reasons you think. They actually changed it because in America, there's another film called Brain Dead with Bill Pullman. And funny enough, that VHS cover, I'm pretty sure was just a still from the movie, but it was enough of this guy who's the skin of his face is kind of like nailed out and kind of like on this kind of frame, but it's a weird ass frame. But they changed the title of Dead Alive, Brain Dead to Dead Alive because locally that movie Brain Dead had also come out, so they didn't want to confuse it.
Mhm.
So that's why they changed it. So there you go. There's a nice, lovely bit of trivia for you.
I
All
like
right.
that. I did not know that.
Yeah. But when it comes to misrepresent, now there's one that freaked me out so bad because the poster was so good. And when I finally watched the movie, man, was I so let down.
Oh
It's
no.
like it's like I wish so much more thought was put into the making of the movie than the design of the poster. Because the post, but I will say, when it comes to advertising, when it comes to baiting you to want to watch the movie, this poster did the job. The poster is the movie Curtains. It's another slasher where it's about where the killer is wearing this very highly detailed old woman mask. Now, the poster has that old woman mask at the top, but at the bottom, the cheeks kind of part to turn into curtains. And then this little girl, and then the curtains part, and I guess it's a little girl kind of opening those curtains underneath, but it has a gorgeous color scheme. It's an art piece. It honestly looks like a Clive Barker art piece. It's just that well
Mhm.
done. It's gorgeous. It's gorgeous. And it's another one where, and much like Dolls, I saw it on the shelf alongside it, and that was another one I was like, I don't want to touch that one.
Yeah.
And even to this day, whenever I saw that poster, I was like, it haunted me. And then finally, when I watch it recently, and I think I made mention of it to you, where I was like looking at it, going like, lighting,
Yeah.
lighting.
Yeah.
Lighting's your friend, people. You know, who taught you how to light? Bill Rebane? Come on. I love that you picked up on that.
Yeah. Oh, you know what? Actually, okay, this one isn't a super iconic one, but I love the poster for the movie The Descent, where I just think it's so
Mm,
clever how they have it's a skull, but
yeah.
when you look at it, it's made up of different women's bodies. They're all like hunched over, and the way they look like they're in a skull, but it also is lit in a way that it looks like a cave. It looks like
Yeah.
you're in there's so many layers to it, and I think it represents the movie so well. It's creepy. Yeah, it doesn't tell you anything about the movie
No,
except
not at
that
all.
you feel claustrophobic looking at it, and the movie is very claustrophobic film. Um, yeah, that's one of my
Yeah.
favorites.
And I remember looking at the poster you described. It actually reminded me, I don't know if you ever really scrutinized the Death's Head moth. This is kind of a tangent, but on Silence of the Lambs, the Death Head moth.
Yeah.
If you really look close at the skull on the back of the Death Head moth, it's naked women making up the skull.
Wow.
Yeah,
I gotta look that up. Oh, that's so cool. I
yeah,
love things like that where they just put a bunch of thought into it. Yeah.
absolutely. And well, I think one of my favorite lines in Kiss of the Spider Woman the musical, where he talks about no one on earth will see, no one on earth but me.
Hmm.
And sometimes you got to think about the fact that sometimes the artist knows the importance of even the most subtle details that, yeah, will probably fly over people's heads, but it's those little, almost subliminal things that they enter into there to kind of make you feel a little uneasy about that.
Yeah.
So the Descent does the job on that. So good choice. Good pick.
Absolutely.
Um, Sometimes though, in our talks about iconography though, sometimes all it takes is just to show just something bold and something so audacious that when people pass it, they have to stop and look and go, what the fuck on it. Um, Sometimes all it takes is just one character that makes people go, Jesus. And that I honestly, it always stopped me every time I passed it, just because I'm like, that's Hellraiser, the original poster for Hellraiser.
Oh, yeah.
And it's fun. And it's funny because Pinhead does because the Hell Priest does not really show up until like a later point in the movie. But Clive Barker knew how potent the image of Pinhead holding the lament configuration
Hmm.
with that look. He knew that that's all he needed to sell the movie, and he was right.
Oh yeah. No, yeah, he absolutely knew that his movie was about imagery. I mean, it's sort of, I think whoever was making the poster hit a gold mine with that one because there's
Yeah,
so many things you can choose from. That movie's all about the visuals and
yeah,
pulling you into this very artful but terrifying world. And yeah, Pinhead wasn't even supposed to be the mascot of the
yeah,
franchise. He
yeah. It was
was
supposed to
just,
be Julia.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
And but yes, that poster, oh man, as a little kid looking at that, it's a face with a guy with nails in
Nails.
its head. It was a while. I could
Mhm.
not wrap my mind around that. It's so smart. And then holding this box that, what the hell is that?
Yeah.
What is it? What's he doing with it? It's so
What
good.
does it represent? Well, yeah, because when you think of box, you think what's in the box? What does it
Hmm.
represent? What does it
Hmm.
do? And why is he coveting this, very clearly coveting this box?
Yes.
Remember, I think it was In Search of Darkness, Doug Bradley talked about the poster and he said that I think the major reason why people were so arrested by that poster is that, and why people were so allured by Pinhead, it's
Mhm.
the intrigue about this is a character who, yeah, like you said, has mutilated flesh all over him. He has pins in his face, and he says, and Doug Bradley was saying, "This is what I did to myself. Imagine what I could do to you." And
Man.
it's that concept that Doug
Yeah.
Bradley surmised. That's probably what intrigued people to watch the movie because they were like, what is the deal with this guy?
Yeah.
And what does this mean?" And that was alone was what intrigue allured me about Hellraiser and what even kind of repelled me a little bit because I'm like going, look at what this guy. I think Doug Bradley's right. That was immediately in my head. I'm like, God, Jesus. I mean, this guy's. I can't even. I could barely look at this guy. I'd be
Hmm.
terrified to see what he does with other people. And lo and behold, I was right because yeah, he injects fish hooks into people, rips their flesh off, and I'm like,
Yeah.
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 And
Wonderful.
that's the other thing. That's the other thing. I think it's important that the poster and any kind of advertising material needs to deliver on the promise. As much as I love curtains, the movie didn't deliver on the promise. But I call it one of the best because it did such a good job delivering deluding me into a promise that it didn't deliver
It
on. But
it
still,
pulled you in.
but
Yeah,
today we're not talking about how good the movie is. We're talking about how good the advertising is to make us want to watch the movie in
exactly.
lieu of how exactly. Some of the worst movies have great posters.
One does not come to mind. I was thinking of a different movie poster, but the movie is phenomenal and one of the greatest films ever made. But the poster is so good is Jaws.
Uh-huh.
I love how simple it is that you just see the head of the shark going up and there's a woman at the top who's like naked and swimming. So you have the threat of violence, but you also have, the promise of sex and
Hmm.
exciting things. Like they really knew who their audience was. They knew that this is an exploitation movie. And what's funny about that poster is that the shark on there is not a great white shark. It's a picture.
No.
He drew that based on a picture of a mako shark. So yeah, if you ever are like, why does the teeth look so weird? And that's not even a great white shark, but it's just this
Yeah.
he had found this. It was a dead shark that he was hanging at a fish, I don't know, on a pier with a bunch where they sell fish and stuff. And he took a picture of the mako shark and he loved the way that the teeth looked and it was terrifying. And it's like, doesn't matter what it is, this image will evoke the emotions that you will feel watching the movie. And I think
Yeah.
you absolutely do.
Yeah, because I've actually of late become averse to swimming in the ocean. And funny enough, I had no problem going to the beach before, but I think even beyond sharks, is there's always just that sense of the unknown of what's down there. And I
Mhm.
think that poster evokes that idea of you don't know what's down there, and yet here you are just freely swimming in their waters. Here's the thing. No, you are for all intents and purposes pissing in their backyard.
Yes. Yes.
You're trifling in nature, and nature is coming up to literally bite you in the ass. And Jaws was a movie that actually was pretty normalized in my house. So, and
Mhm.
my mom didn't seem to have a problem letting the imagery of that show around. And yeah, I've seen that poster so many times. And even as a kid, I think, and you know what it is? I love how you talked about the teeth because yeah, I remember fixating on those teeth because those teeth almost look like raised, like buzzsaw teeth practically.
Yep.
That freaked me out because I'm like going, man, it's those teeth. Well, that thing, just the thought of being bitten into by those teeth.
Yes. Well, that's a mako shark. Those are the
Yeah.
needle-like teeth that they have.
That's hilarious to me. That is
Yeah.
actually really, really funny.
Yeah.
You got to love a poster that tells you exactly what you think, what the movie is, but the audience is so set in thinking it's going to be something else just by, brand recognition.
Hmm.
Even though the filmmaker says, no, it's going to be like this. Honestly, and I should have saw it coming, but I'm glad I didn't. But the poster for Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2,
Oh,
The Breakfast Club poster.
brilliant.
Yes.
Yes. They put that on a huge billboard on
Yeah.
Sunset Avenue in the middle of everything so that and that's what really got the buzz about the
Well,
movie.
it's funny, and even the tagline after a decade of silence, the buzz is back. And it's like
Yes.
it's like, and people were so, and of course the reaction was like, "Oh my God, no one told us it was gonna be funny. It's supposed to be Texas Chainsaw Massacre." It's like, look at that poster. They
It
were telling you exactly what this movie was.
yes.
Toby Hooper was not hiding anything from you guys. He was telling you this is a freaking comedy, and it's gonna be a comedy. I mean, look at freaking Chop Top.
Oh, classic.
They got a
I
dead body there. I think. Oh, I think what was it? The dead body was the one laying on the side. I think that's what it was, or something like that. I can't remember, but it was just
I
the
think
fact that,
so. Yeah.
well, yeah, the dead body. Yeah, the dead body of Nubbins is the one. I think he's doing the
Yes.
Judd. They got him doing the Judd. No, he's not doing the Judd Nelson. Oh, he's doing the Anthony Michael Hall.
Hmm.
Where he's leaning on the side. So it's like, come on, people. That poster just perfectly summed up what that movie was, and you all acted surprised.
Such a good one. I'm so glad you mentioned that poster.
Of course. I mean, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre poster, the original, it's just the image of Leatherface carrying in the girl.
Hmm.
That looks like a press clipping from a that looked like a press clipping from like some kind of like police report or something.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, I mean, they were selling the authenticity of that one. So, and I can understand where Toby Hooper was coming from because he knew Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2 was meant to be funnier. And I think he knew that people were going to be off put by all of a sudden, like expecting something potent like the first one. I think he knew deep down that people were. So I think he was trying to prime them to go, guys, this is going to be hilarious. This is going to be a fucking riot.
Yeah.
Yeah, but people weren't. People didn't guess that until now. So,
I love
but
the idea of that poster too because that it's also a love note to posters. Like it just tells
yeah,
you how iconic sometimes just the poster is. Obviously, the movie Breakfast Club is a classic and
hmm
iconic, but people still remember that poster and the fact that they were able to riff on it, that you're looking at the cast of Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2, that you
yeah.
knew immediately that that's the Breakfast Club. And I think that that's super fun.
The time period of the '80s was really the time when well, that was, I mean, that's of course the period of the prime period of Drew Struzan, guys like him who
Hmm.
painted these amazing posters, you know, which always had a particular aesthetic that really kind of lent a lot to what you were going to see. I mean, actually, I believe Drew Struzan was the one who drew The Thing, who did the poster of The Thing.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, the famous one of just this isn't my example, but we'd be remiss not to talk about Drew Struzan in this discussion.
Mhm.
But yeah, the famous light emanating from the silhouette of the guy in the parka. You don't know what is his deal. You just know something otherworldly is going on with him. But
Yeah.
that,
Yeah, well, I mean, one of the other posters that comes to mind for me is the original Friday the 13th.
yeah,
That it's the shape of Jason's body, or at least some,
well, it's the shape of someone's body at
yeah,
that point.
large
Yeah.
killer. Yeah, obviously. But it's just everything in the shape, the Camp Crystal Lake. There's there's so much to look at, and it's like one of those you want. to keep staring at it and try to find all the little things. And I love that poster.
As a kid, Friday the 13th, that first poster is a great one, but I remember just looking at, because of course all the Friday the 13th were all lined up next to each other.
Hmm.
Some of them you could say were the same, but slightly different. But a lot of them, all but once they leaned into the hockey mask as an icon, man, did they lean into that for a lot of them.
Oh yes. Oh yes.
In fact, one of them, actually for the final chapter, the image of the knife going into the hockey mask side, that image was so potent. The LJN video game, when you turned it on, that's the first thing you see.
It's so good.
Oh yeah,
That's
and
right.
even Friday the 13th Part 3 has Jason stabbing outwards with it
Hmm.
going through. Of course, it didn't say in 3D, so you didn't know
The
what that meant, but
3D. Yes.
the,
I actually, I believe it was on iTunes. A few years ago, I went through and was like, I'm gonna sit down and rewatch all of them throughout the month of October or something. And
yeah,
the cover art for the iTunes, the digital, was so cool that they were all, and it was matching set. It was just a white background, and all of them, it would have one weapon that's used and like blood droplets. And there's just this
really.
white with the red blood that was gorgeous. My favorite of the franchise is the final chapter, and that's the wine bottle opener, the corkscrew that he uses.
Oh,
You see that with blood. And it was just one of those things that I was like, it's a bummer that it was on digital. If that was available as a box set or something, I absolutely would have had to buy it. I loved those posters. And
yeah,
they were clearly made for fans who already knew what the franchise was, already kind of had a sense for each of the films. And I thought
yeah.
that was really cool.
Though I would say if there's one where the franchise complemented or the posters really complement the franchise, especially in terms of the concept, I
Mhm.
actually felt the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise across the board, even the lesser titles had amazing posters.
Yeah.
Principally because dreams are a major factor of the plots. They made sure that the posters themselves had a dreamlike element to it, or even a nightmarish element to it. So, of those, every single one of them just kind of stood out in one way or another. Even the Dream Child just had really kind of fixated on the pram, that really nasty looking baby pram,
Hmm.
as the focus of it, and it was Freddy holding it kind of like a labyrinth crystal, and inside was that, and then of course you had the Dream Warriors, where every single blade had one of the Dream Warriors
I
hanging
love
off
that
of it.
one. Yes.
So good. And again, I just feel bad that I can't find, could never find who designed these posters. Comment section for everyone, especially in YouTube. Tell us who
Yeah.
had these, because I want to know who designed all of these. Well, one though they did say that the development of that franchise was kind of very close knit, especially with Bob Shea and all of them. So because I guess they consider that their baby, they were very passionate about making sure they were advertising it in the best way possible. Even Freddy's Dead had a great poster of Freddy emerging from the red void
That's right.
with his claw like towards the camera, and just a great image of the bus looming from the
Hmm.
darkness. I'm like, even that was so well done. I mean, and I think when you're advertising a franchise, they understand how that right there is how iconography is so important. And not only that, because of familiarity of the character, they know that you have to use the icon in order to bait people to come see it again. Actually,
Yes.
with Jason, one that I'm sad got protested off because the tourism board was so worried about the impact of it, was Jason Takes Manhattan. There was an amazing
Yeah.
poster of the I Heart New York, but
Yeah.
Jason cutting through it.
That's awesome. I don't know if I've seen that one.
Oh, well, that was the early teaser poster for it, but
Okay.
then the New York City Tourism Board told them get rid of that now because they
Oh.
didn't want to give off the wrong impression. But that poster was so it was pretty potent, and I remember seeing that teaser poster in my local movie theater. Of course, I mean that's another example of misleading advertising, because we all know the truth about Friday 13th Part 8.
Uh,
We know
yes.
the truth.
Uh, um, it's
Yeah.
funny you mentioned the Nightmare on Elm Street posters, and I feel like I'd be remiss if I is
Actually,
just
yeah, you did want to share a wonderful bit of information with us about.
so when I first moved to LA, I was working at a movie trailer house called Ignition Creative. They had a print department. So they
Hmm.
also did movie posters. And this was back when the remake of Nightmare on Elm Street came out, which we can all agree was a horrible film. Just not good. I will always adore Kyle Gallner, but like, oh, I hate that movie. But
Yeah, fortunately, we can adore Kyle Gallner in so many other amazing stuff.
he's such a scream king.
Strange
Um,
Darling for the fucking win, man.
oh, so good.
So
So
good.
also
Strange Darling,
cool poster.
damn good poster.
Very cool poster.
Also, yeah, and the freaking Passenger. Holy shit, his performance in the
Oh,
Passenger. Goddamn. But
that's but yeah. But so they were when I was working there, they were working on those posters. And something that I got to learn, um, I'm not gonna say their names because I don't know if they want me to give away their names. But one of the gentlemen who worked at this print department, he's a guy who had a shaved head, and he is actually Freddy on the posters.
really,
Obviously, they changed the face, they put all the makeup and everything on there, but we had our own studio. Warner Brothers lent us the costume and the glove. I have
wow.
actually touched the glove that was in the movie, which again breaks my heart that that movie just sucked. So it's
Ah.
not much to brag about. But yeah, he had to put on the costume, and this is not an actor or a model. This is, one of the
Mm,
poster designers, and they took
yeah,
pictures of him and then manipulated those to look like Jackie.
Jackie Earl Haley.
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
Jackie Earle Haley. Um, so it's always I love looking at those posters and knowing that, oh, that's actually one of the sweetest men I've ever had the pleasure of working with.
Yeah, you actually did some. Yeah, yeah, and of course the one you're referring to is the kind of the bust shot of Freddy brandishing the
Mhm.
glove. Yeah, again, you're right. It's so frustrating because the advertising materials on that movie are great. That's a great poster. You also sent me another one, which is actually pretty damn ominous, of a silhouette of Freddy looming over
Mhm.
a little girl in what appears to be a hallway, a back, and he's backlit.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good one right there too. I
Yeah.
mean, to the credit of both of them, they are selling the tone of the movie because for all the movie's faults, it at least maintains a consistent sinister tone. But again, we'll get to that. We'll get to that movie
Yeah,
later
that's a
on.
whole other discussion.
Yeah, whole other, yeah, but when it comes to representing the movie, I will say they do represent the movie. So at least they had that going for them, which is nice.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, Actually, and this does kind of lean into one of my favorites, and I'm just going to say for the franchise as a whole, uh, the Saw franchise. I know that they skated controversy a couple times
Hmm.
with those posters because pure and simple, a lot of them did actually portray gore.
Yeah.
I mean, the first Saw poster, I actually just got to um, meet the gentleman who actually built the reverse bear trap
Oh,
uh,
wow.
recently, and yeah, he talked about his whole thing of making that. He did not know that that image was going to take off. So now the original image for the first poster of Saw was just going to be the feet, just the
Hmm.
disembodied feet and all that. But the image of that reverse bear trap was so potent and so striking that the poster that went out was the in the dark with the shot of Amanda in the reverse bear trap
Yeah.
poster. Uh, but that kind of ended up being like an early indicator of the way they were going to advertise these movies later on. The people who designed those posters just knew that the best way to sell it was just grisly imagery, but also paired with something. I don't want to say otherworldly, but there's definitely something abstract. I think abstract is the best way to describe it.
Hmm.
I mean,
Hmm.
um, but the most controversial was when they did Saw 2, and I'm doing that. Don't worry, I'm not saying up your butt with like no. The original poster had just two disembodied fingers turned upright,
Yeah, the
saying
dismembered fingers.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. But the problem was that got so much controversy because for all intents and purposes, you're showing like gore in
Yeah.
your poster,
Yeah.
so it forced them to zoom in on the fingers pointing upwards. But then you get to Saw 3, and the three is a guy's teeth.
Hmm.
right there. So they were coming up with some new wild, grisly ways to like sell these movies, but also kind of. But you've even sent me some amazing examples here for Saw 6. One was a motion poster you said of that was John Kramer and done.
Yeah, so about 15 years ago, motion
Yeah.
posters were starting to become a really big thing. I feel like
Yeah.
they didn't really catch on, but I would especially see them in malls. Malls have
Lenticular posters. Yeah.
yes, yes. And that one is really fun because it I sent you the one sheet of it, but the motion poster is you're looking down and on just white and you see all these little dots that are actually people walking and they all just walk
Yeah.
around and then towards the end of it they stand in a way that it forms John Kramer's face. um
Nice.
so I was working at Ignition Creative, and that was when, hey, anyone who's not working right now, we need a bunch of people to go out to the parking lot and walk around. And I did that. They had the photographer up on the roof looking down, filming us. And yes, so I am technically a few of the people in there that
Ah!
I'm sure it wasn't that many of us, so they would take it
Yeah, they would loop it
and then
over around and around. Yeah, and I'm
manipulate it because we did not actually walk into the pattern of his face. That's
and
all beautiful
and very
wizardry.
and also very clearly you did not because I'm looking closer at them. It looks like they may have were you all wearing pig heads and robes?
Nope, I think
Because
that was all added. It was just us
yeah.
in our clothes, walk, but they needed
Motion reference.
the movement
Yeah.
of people walking around. And
Mhm.
yeah, so that I always thought that was kind of fun. And it was for the same poster that they have the bird's eye view of the carousel and the people on the
Yeah.
carousel. And those are people also that were not the actors in the movie. Those were the people who
Yeah.
worked on the poster. And it's funny because I look at that poster and I can just see, again, I'm not going to mention names, but they all worked at the time, worked at Ignition Creative, and I can just see these amazing people I worked with. And it's like, oh yeah, that's absolutely her who's strapped to the carousel right now.
Well, whoever it was, I got to give them mass props for this work, but just overall for the entire. Because one thing I also noticed about the Saw franchise is that they never do just one poster. They always seem to like do different types of posters with different types of very bold, very grisly imagery. Either delivering, either of course giving you the promise that you're watching a Saw movie, so you're probably going to see some gnarly machines, gnarly machinations, probably, and obviously some gnarly gore. I remember Saw 4 had a great one of the upper half of John Kramer's head on a scale.
Yes.
And I
Yeah.
think Saw 5 had one of someone very clearly wearing John Kramer's face, and it looks like that his skin of his face is strapped onto this imposter's head.
Yes.
Which,
Yes.
again, if you know the plot of Saw 5, that's actually kind of perfect. I think the only poster in the entire franchise I would say is lackluster was Spiral,
Yeah.
just because they're like, well, Chris Rock's in the movie, so we got to advertise Chris Rock, and
Yeah.
so they have a just a simple poster of Chris Rock looking at the poster, going, "Are you fucking serious?"
It's also
And
that's the first one that kind of breaks the aesthetic. Like one of the things I love that is as a franchise, almost all of the posters, because you're right, they come up with different images, different kinds of posters, but
mhm,
they almost all have the same color theme and color palette.
yeah, like kind
And
of grays and
in this gritty feel to it, they don't completely reinvent the look and feel of the poster. It's like you're still being promised everything you love of these movies. It's this, the same thing, only here's new imagery you haven't seen,
yeah,
same white sterile lab, but now instead of fingers, it's John Kramer's head on a scale. And
yeah.
I love the way they all tie in together.
Precisely, and it's very clear that they understand that because when they did Saw 10 or Saw X, of course they
Mm.
had that amazing poster, and they obviously knew when they were making the movie that that eyeball trap was going to be
Oh, yeah,
one of the most talked about segments. Of course, every moment of that movie is worth talking about, as I
completely.
did in a previous episode. But just how perfect it was that they were able to cross those hoses to form the X, and just a guy very clearly suffering, and even better, the implication of what that thing's going to do to him
Yeah.
is enough to make you go, oh God, Jigsaw really is back. And it's like,
Yeah.
this feels classic. This feels bold. This kind of, it feels like classic Saw. So I
Yeah.
just got to give hats off to the consistency of throughout that, the advertising on that entire frame. Even Jigsaw had an amazing one of John Kramer's face, but it's painted on, like, actually it looks old. Like his face has been painted on for a while and the paint is chipping off.
Yes.
Which
Yeah.
again, if you know the story of Jigsaw, that kind of fits. So it just feels right. So I just got to applaud the people who do the advertising on the Saw franchise. So that's my big thing talking about franchises. I mean, actually, probably though I will say when it comes to franchises, if there's one that I think was mostly missed a lot of times was Halloween.
Yeah.
And probably one of the weakest ones because you could tell it was just blatantly copy pasted and recycled was Halloween 5, the Revenge of Michael Myers,
Yeah.
because the
Yeah.
poster was practically a repeat of the poster of Halloween 4, where it's even the same mask that they use. They just copy and paste it onto the next one. And honestly,
I
there's a lot of times I keep thinking I'm looking at the poster for Halloween 4, and
yeah.
it's like, no, that's Halloween 5. It's like, no, she doesn't even wear the clown costume in 5.
I think there was a lot of issues with five. Four
Yeah.
was so good and set up so many things, and so five should have been really good,
Yeah.
and it just completely went sideways. And so yeah, the poster kind of to me like it embodies the spirit of the movie in that we're riding off the tailcoats of the tailcoats of how cool four was. So we're just gonna
Yeah.
pretend this is and it's no
I think
that's not.
it's also indicative of how rushed through that movie was, because that movie
Yeah.
was notoriously rushed through.
Yeah.
But since we're on the topic of the decline of movie posters, I will say during the 90s, especially, I know you're gonna, with all of our talks about Scream, you're gonna hate me. I've never, at least not until recently, I've never liked the posters for Scream.
So which one are you talking about? Just her face and it's black and
Well,
white, but the eyes are color?
the ones that are that, but they also have just the splash poster, just the cast lineup
Oh yeah.
at the bottom, because unfortunately that set a really bad precedent later on, because not just Scream was doing it. I Know What You Did Last Summer did it,
Mhm.
Valentine did it, Urban Legends did it, and just it seemed to be
Halloween.
just more about, yeah, even Halloween. And that's why it's wonderful we use as a segue, because even Halloween fell into that trap with Halloween H2O, and even with Halloween Resurrection. They were banking more on a pretty cast as
Yeah.
opposed to selling the fact that this is a horror film. To
Yeah.
me, the Scream films didn't start finally getting that good mojo until 5 and 6, because they were satirizing it
Hmm.
with the way how they just really went overboard with it, and even just had the great tagline, "It's always someone you know."
I love the original ideas that they had for the posters where yes, it's just her face in black and white
Mm,
screaming, but the her eyes are in color. And then they do the same thing for I mean, there's one for each of the first three Scream films, and they all tie in
yeah.
together. But to me, and I don't know if this is true, but just as someone who works in the industry, I feel like an artist or the marketing department, a group of people came up with this awesome idea, this
Mm,
beautiful poster that's going to get people's attention, but the studio looked at it and got scared and said no one's going to watch this because they can't tell that Drew Barrymore's in it. They don't know who's in this, they don't know what this is, so we have to put all these other things in there, which is
yeah.
something that unfortunately happens to movie trailers all the time. And so I feel like with Scream they have those amazing posters. They are out there, but that's not what's going to be on the main cover of
Yeah.
the box sets and the VHSs and everything. And you're right. It's like, oh, here's this watered down photoshopped thing and yeah.
Yeah, with just these really pretty people, some of them who don't even look like the way they do in the movie. I
Oh yeah.
mean, the poster,
Ye-
yeah, that cast lineup had Skeet Ulrich where with this sexy emo rocker goatee.
Yeah.
He doesn't have that in the movie.
No.
No.
Like that was clearly they took that photo like way after. That's what I'm saying. I feel like my theory is correct, where the studio looked at it as like, ah, no one's gonna buy this. They need to know. They need to know that these pretty people are in it. Like, okay, well,
Well,
we
remember
the
Weinstein,
actors are
unfortunately.
gone. What happened?
Remember, Weinsteins were involved with the Scream franchise, so I'm pretty sure they were like, they're going to go pretty people are in it, so we got to show the pretty people.
Just take a picture of Skeet now. It's fine. It's the same thing. Like, yeah.
Oh, geez, yeah. But that did kind of lead to a pretty bad. And I remember being dissuaded from horror for the longest time because the advertising just felt it did no favors in selling us on the idea that anything in here was going to be scary. Because unfortunately, because a lot of people saw that that's what was they were doing with the mainstream stuff, a lot of other places were doing something similar where they were showing, oh, sexy girl on the cover, being
Mhm.
stalked by a killer, and the killer looks so generic. I mean, the posters for the Shark Attack movies and the freaking Bloody Murder movies are just pain because it's like you are just suckling at the teat of something that you never started.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
it was just lazy. It was just so lazy. And yeah, I didn't watch Urban Legend until recently because I was so put off by. I still haven't seen
Oh, wow.
Valentine yet because I was so put off by how lazy the advertising was on both of those.
Yeah, that poster sucks. It's a fun movie though. I wouldn't
Yeah,
say it's great, but it's fun.
yeah, I had a great time with Urban Legend when I finally sat down and watched it.
Oh, I
So I
love
was
Urban
like,
Legend. I love Urban
yeah.
Legend. Yeah.
So I think in a wonderful kind of seesaw effect, we're kind of showing how a bad poster really can not do. Oh, actually, another movie that was so betrayed by the poster, and to me, I think it's his best work, Nightbreed. The advertising on Nightbreed is awful. And it is so bad because the studio, Morgan Creek, they did not know how to advertise this movie for shit. And not only that, they were terrified to advertise the truth of the movie. Have you seen
Mm-hmm.
Nightbreed? Yeah.
Oh, I love Nightbreed. I'm trying to picture what the poster is for some
They were
reason.
selling, they did not like the idea that this is a movie where the monsters were the good guys.
Yeah.
So they wanted to focus hard on the slasher side of it, of course, with Dr. Decker. But one of the major posters had just a close up of um, Laurie's head. Yep, and just basically talking about how she never knew the truth of her boyfriend, kind of thing like that. And it's like that's not what this movie is. That's a minor aspect of the plot, but that's not what this movie is about at all. Ironically, the only one that I think really does at not great, but still represent the movie is just the shot of Boone with the rest of the Nightbreed,
Mm-hmm.
all looking like all badass, looking like a 80s action film. I'm like, that ironically does because you're holding all of them looking like the kind of heroes that you'd see in a balls to the wall action film. But
Yeah.
man, but they were not, they were leaning away from letting people know that this is about a movie where they're saying humanity sucks.
Yeah. Yeah.
But man, and even, I mean, of course, there's a long tragic story about the whole making of that movie, but that was a tip off of why that movie tanked was the fact that they did not represent it properly in the advertising.
Yeah. That's a
Yeah.
that's a bummer because I absolutely love that movie and now that's why like I couldn't even think of what the poster looks like because you're right. It was that weird, just lackluster, had nothing to do
Yeah.
with anything.
And sometimes they even just strictly rely on brand recognition that has nothing to do with the movie they're advertising.
Yeah.
Just so that way, I mean, like even sometimes how they're trying to say, oh, you thought this is good, this is better. Like even Silent Night, Deadly Night, as great as the image of the Santa hand coming out with the axe is, their tagline was, you made it through Halloween. Now see if you can make it through Christmas,
Yep.
kind of
Yep. Now
things.
try and survive Christmas.
Yeah, try and survive Christmas, which tongue in cheek, but still kind of garish. No, the worst and I think most egregious example is because I feel it betrayed the movie, but it also was a bit of an insult to the main actor because you're basically saying like you're not here to see what this poster is advertising. You're here to see this. Was the poster for the Phantom of the Opera with Robert Englund.
See, I don't even know what that poster looks like.
Ooh. Because it is actually a wonderful adaptation of Phantom of the Opera. It is a really, really well done. And
Okay.
Robert Englund really, you could tell he wanted to play this part.
Oh.
But take a look at that poster.
Oh. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, that's a bad poster.
That's horrible. That's
Yeah,
you're selling a different movie.
yeah, look at that. Robert Englund was Freddy, and now they're saying now he's the Phantom of the Opera. They are banking off another franchise in order to pimp that
Absolutely.
out. And it's like, listen, we know who Robert Englund is. You don't have to remind us that he's Freddy. And even worse, you have a, and he doesn't, now granted, one of the key things in the movie is that he does steal skin and he does sew it into his flesh, but even then, he never looks like that at all in the
No,
movie.
with the hat and everything. And
Yeah.
what's a bummer is the fact that it's Phantom of the Opera. This is already a
Yeah.
well-known, established IP.
Yeah. Well,
You can,
by this point, the musical had freaking roared on Broadway at this
yes,
point. So people know what Phantom of the Opera is.
yes.
You
I
know, that, yeah,
I
it's,
like the idea of saying, the guy who you already are terrified of because he was Freddy, now he's the Phantom of the Opera. Like I think that tagline is on the right wavelength, but then I want to see like celebrate this new Phantom imagery.
yeah.
Like he's not Freddy anymore. This is why he's scary. And yeah, they
Hmm.
they had legs to stand on with that. So it's very strange that they just
Yeah,
went straight
they,
up
well,
Freddy.
honestly, you just, all you need to say is just put Robert Englund at the top. You don't even have to say, we know who he is, just put that at the top. And then
Yeah.
yeah, just have like a cool, like very minimalist shot. Like honestly kind of advertise it the way they advertised did a lot of the advertising of Bram Stoker's Dracula, just something very operatic, something very
Yeah.
gothic and just very, and honestly very minimalist. I mean, just the image of the Phantom alone is enough
Mhm.
to get people saying, I'm intrigued. And just say Robert Englund. And even just say Robert Englund is the Phantom of the Opera.
That's what I was thinking. Yeah, just have that
That's
so
all,
it's like
yeah.
you know the name and now and you know what this character is. And now
And even better, if you do minimalist with the image of like even just a silhouette of him, in the hat and the cloak, and just maybe do a little vague glimpse of it of his masked face. I'm like, you could play with people, what people think they know of Robert Englund.
hmm
You could play with that anticipation, you could play with that recognition, and then surprise them with the shit they will see in that movie. Because what they do see in that movie, what you get in that movie is really unique and very interesting in its own right, that is so far beyond what we know Robert Englund for. And that's why Robert Englund loved making that movie, is because he was doing something that was very close to his heart, of something different
Yeah.
that he was not known for. And it's just a damn shame that the advertising did not convey what that movie really was to people. They were so busy just banking on star power,
Yeah.
not star power and brand recognition, and that just ruined the
Shame.
movie.
It's a shame. It's
Yeah.
just I think too many studios get scared of their own movies and they're very scared of how to advertise it. They, I don't think they give audiences enough credit a lot of times
Yeah.
where no, the audience they know what they know who Freddy is. So just advertise Freddy. It's, okay, but your audience could be
Yeah.
very intrigued by something new. They're not stupid.
Exactly.
One of my favorite movie posters, you had mentioned the tagline for the remake of the requel of Candyman, and the
Yeah.
poster for the original Candyman is so fascinating and so uncomfortable because it is just an
Yes.
eyeball. You can see his silhouette in the eye and the bee that's on the eye. Like that you looking at it, it already makes you like want to blink and it's
Yeah.
just so off-putting and upsetting. But I mean, that's imagery just that has just stuck with me for forever. So I feel like I would be remiss if I did not bring up that poster.
And I even have a bit of nostalgia with that poster too, because I was looking through a comic book one time and they advertised that movie in the comics, and that poster came up. And yeah,
Okay.
that right there. But the other thing that's great is that it has a great tagline where it says, "We dare you to say his name 5 times."
Yes.
And the thing is, I have a feeling that enough people probably, and I think I remember that poster got stolen a lot from bus sides, from bus
Oh,
stops. Because like
okay.
how some of the bus stops had like the poster
Mhm.
at the bus stop. I know that that poster got stolen a couple times, but
Mhm.
I like that. But that image along with the tagline, that alone, because you know that there were people who probably did exactly that, probably went to their
Mhm.
bathrooms and said the name 5 times to like
Yeah.
do
Oh,
that.
yeah.
So probably. So that's a good example of interactive advertising right there that engages with the audience. So good example. Good example
Yeah.
there. but fortunately, the one thing that seems to be moving through today, and I think a lot of it really is just because of the benefit of generational nostalgia and the fact that a lot of the filmmakers of today are people who grew up looking at these posters
Yeah.
and really being inspired by it. I will happily say I think horror has been the best it's been in a long time with advertising. I mean, especially with poster work. The stuff for Nosferatu alone has
Oh,
been inspired.
yes.
And yeah, and even and yes, we've been talking about the substance like crazy for the past couple episodes to the point where we even have a podcast episode about it. But even just the minimalist nature of the substance, just the vial of the activator
Mhm.
is enough to intrigue, or just the image of Demi Moore lying on her side with her back split open and stitched shut.
Yeah,
That's enough.
it's
But
so good.
yeah, and I mean, what are some actually as a good way to wrap everything up? Like, what are some recent examples of ones that really kind of like blew your
Oh
mind?
man. This is I wasn't ready for this question.
I
I
know I
I
like
feel like
surprising
I
people.
just don't get to see a lot of posters now for newer films. Actually, which one? I don't know if this is it's not that new anymore, unfortunately, but I love the poster for Krampus. That's just this
Yeah,
scary
it's the
hand holding the snow globe. Uh,
yes.
that is, I think, one of the coolest posters.
It also kind of reminds me of the original, even though it's not even like resembles it. It has the same spirit of the original poster for Gremlins.
Okay, yeah,
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 the
yeah.
original poster, which again, Krampus is a movie that really does belong hand in
Oh yeah.
hand with Gremlins,
Uh,
but that one just had that great creepy image of Billy holding the box and something peeking out inside of it. And for, I envy the people. This is why I always say if I had a machine, I would go back in time to like see people's reaction to these things. But
oh,
because
yes.
that poster did not give any kind of hint that what was in that box was something that was going to be sweet, adorable, and benign and cuddly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Whereas there was a kind of a sequel poster to it, though, where afterwards it was that, but then it was Stripe ripping through the poster, going, "We're here,"
Yes.
something a bit more tongue in cheek. But I think that poster came around when the time came when the cat was out of the bag and everyone knew what the
Mhm.
Gremlins were. Okay, as a bit of fun. All right, we'll play a game. I want to play a game. All
Okay.
right, all right. Pick a franchise and tell me what poster you would design for that.
Ooh. I love the idea of just one iconic item, kind of like how I
Hmm.
was describing the iTunes covers for the Friday the 13th. Um, I'm trying to think of a franchise that I would use. I mean, the Saw posters do the same thing.
Hmm.
That's my favorite, where there's no people. You just see
Um, Maybe think of
like
a franchise that doesn't typically have
an
that.
object. Yeah. Um, yeah, I'm blanking on like a good franchise.
You want me to throw one at you?
Yeah, please, please.
Okay, all right, let's see. How would you do it if it were Michael Myers, if it were Halloween? Since
Oh,
that's a franchise that really desperately needs that kind of help.
yeah. I mean, they kind of do. It's just the knife and the pumpkin.
Well, in the original poster, yeah, I'm talking about recent installments. I mean, I will say the David Gordon Green trilogy had a good use of color and just using the image of Michael's face, but even then, it's practically copy and paste, where it's just Michael's face, Michael's face, Michael's face.
Yeah.
But it's like, I mean, what would you do differently with the Halloween franchise?
Ooh, if I was taking the David Gordon Green Halloween films, I I would love to do something that's actually not in the movie, but shows some kind of classic Halloween decoration. Uh,
Hmm.
an iconic decoration that you've probably seen in the 90s that's used, but have it uh tarnished looking and old, maybe blood splattered. That might be a bit too much. But something that's not in the movie, but you look at it and you are already like, oh, this is the spirit of Halloween. Like you
Yeah.
already have the emotions that are evoked, but it's not pristine and shiny and new. Like this is aged and tainted somehow. I think that would be really fun, and you could do a different iconic Halloween decoration for each of the movies.
Hmm. Oh, actually, I got a good one. Actually, I have something that might work that fits in that helm. Okay, so picture a front porch, jack-o'-lantern on the banister of the porch.
Hmm.
You can clearly see into the window of the house. And way in the back into the kitchen is where you see Michael Myers doing his thing on someone. Obviously, you don't see any gore, but you just see him like kind of lingering. But it's so far in the back that it's almost barely visible, but you're seeing like him back there doing something.
That'd
And
be
the
cool.
pumpkin in the foreground. So you get the Halloween imagery, but then you have that tarnishing, and even if you want, even just a little sliver of blood splatter on the window in between them,
Hmm. Hmm.
something like that.
I like that. I also
Yeah.
think same thing, but instead of Michael in action, just have you can see his silhouette just standing
Ooh, ooh, or even
and
better.
watching. Kind of like how I
You,
was thinking of the new opening logo for Blumhouse. They do that.
yeah, yeah, kind of like that. Or what I'm thinking, like maybe even a door frame, and you don't see Michael, you just see his hand like clutching a woman by the throat and seeing her just
Oh,
like that. That.
yeah. Yeah.
There you go. Yeah, that would be something. It would be subtle, but it would be, but people, and especially if you do the jack-o'-lantern from the original, like the original credits of Halloween. Yeah,
Yes.
the yeah, if you do it like in that style, they'll pick up on it and they'll realize, oh, that's
Absolutely.
right there.
Yeah. I
Right
like
there.
that. That's a great one.
Okay.
A great one.
Okay. Yeah. You see, for I myself, I okay, well, I'm gonna go completely off the wall here, but um I want there to be a basket case 4 so bad. And I have a wonderful pitch for it. Honestly, because Hannah Lauder's hinted at the idea that Brain Damage and Frankenhooker are all in the same universe with
Hmm.
it.
Hmm.
Um, I kind of, but even then, after the ending of Basket Case 3, where all the unique individuals have rebelled, and it's been so long since the third one, I'm like, wouldn't it be hilarious if Belial runs for president afterwards? So I think what we need is just the Oval Office, American flag just in the background, the desk, the basket,
Yes. Just the basket sitting on
just
top
the
of it.
basket, just a basket. And then like under the desk, you see like a hand, a dead hand, and maybe a little bit of blood, like in the underbelly of the desk.
Oh, that's amazing. I
Like
love that idea.
and then you just say the president of the United States, and just do a nice spin on the original tagline. The president of the United States is very small, very twisted. Or actually, no, the tenant in the Oval Office is very
Oh, there you
small,
go.
very twisted, and very mad.
I love that. That's a great
That's what
one.
I, yeah. Well, I think to me it would totally advertise how ridiculous and absurd we're going to get from a franchise that, if you've kept up with it, has gone
Yeah.
completely crazy. It's like, how much more crazier can we get? Let's put Belial in the fucking White House.
I love it. I mean,
Yeah.
they did that at least with the advertising style of Chucky season 3.
Yeah. Oh my God.
Great.
The
So
stuff they've
good.
been doing with Chucky has been great. Like they've been leaning hard. Like, yeah, or was it? I don't know if it was just one I came up with, but it was like, yeah, America's about to get chucked
Yeah.
or something like
Yes.
that. Or oh my God, yeah, the stuff they've been doing for Chucky has been wonderful. I think, well, actually, as a testament to the design of Scream, after Scream came out and everyone was going crazy on the meta kick, they leaned hard into parodying Scream 2 in particular, because they did Two Faces in that one.
Hmm. Hmm.
I think it was Nev's and Jada Pinkett's face
Yep.
on that poster.
Yep.
But when they did Bride of Chucky, they parodied that poster with Chucky and Tiffany
Yes.
on both
Yeah.
sides. So that was a franchise that had no fucks to give. I mean, even Seed of Chucky had an amazing poster where it's parodying Michelangelo's creation of man,
Oh,
where it's
that's
Chucky,
right.
where
Yeah.
Chucky's reaching out to touch the finger of his offspring that's in a pram reaching upwards.
I
And
forgot about that one.
even the tagline was great, deliver us some evil.
Hmm. Hmm.
Yeah. So okay,
Perfect.
that was fun. That was a lot of fun. So all right. Now as we wrap up today, as is customary, we always talk about what we've watched recently. So have you gotten a chance to see anything new, either new or old, recently that you'd like to tell us about?
And it's things that we've actually touched on in here. I got to watch Strange Darling.
Mm.
recently, which I loved that movie. That was so much fun. I loved the editing style of it.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
yeah,
I yeah,
that
I
was a great one.
yeah, I joke with people. I was like saying like if that movie was in just standard linear order, it would be nowhere near as fun or as
It'd be
interesting as
so
what you
boring.
did.
Yeah.
It would. Yeah. Oh no, that was one I walked in on that sucker blind. I only wanted to see it because I love Kyle Gallner,
Mhm.
so I was like
Yeah,
I
me
have
too.
to support. And he was like when that movie was in the theaters, he was like on Twitter, fuck you, Elon. Yeah, he was practically every day, like almost every hour, he was pimping out Strange Darling because he was like, I love making this movie.
Was he? Oh, that's awesome. I love that. Yeah,
Oh
and then
yeah,
I obviously I was there for him, and then I can't think of her name, but from
Willa
Scream,
Fitzgerald. Yeah, from
she was
Scream, the TV series.
amazing. She was
Was
so good.
so
Yeah.
freaking good. I was so thrilled to see her like really get a chance. Well, and I forgot she was in Fall of the House of Usher. So
Yes.
I've just been really happy seeing her just pop up, really giving these like standout performances. Yeah, she was devious.
Yeah,
She was
that was a
devious
good
as
one.
hell. Yeah. Yeah, recently I've been actually like endeavoring to break my record from last year. Last year I watched about 180 new and old movies for the first time.
Okay.
So this year I broke it. I finally broke the record. Um,
Nice.
and
Congrats.
I ended up, yes, thank you very much. I'm now currently at 182, and the ones I broke it with were a film called I Trapped the Devil. It came out a couple years ago. It's on Shutter now. It's about this husband and wife. They go to visit the husband's brother, who they've had kind of a strained relationship. Well, they get there, and he is in a state of distress, and it turns out he's got someone locked in his basement. There's a crucifix on the door.
You know
It's
what? I
kind of a,
think yeah, I
it's
haven't
got
seen this, but I see it on Shutter. Every time I open the
yeah.
app, it's one of the first ones of You Might Like.
Yeah. And but yeah, he's basically saying like I've got the devil down there. So a lot of the movie is about them trying to discuss what if he's got just some hostage down there? What if your
Yeah.
brother's really lost his mind? Does he really have the devil down there? So it plays a lot with, in a way, it's kind of like one of my favorite sci-fi films, The Man from Earth, where you're debating
Hmm.
whether or not this person is legit. You don't know if they're just bonkers or they're fucking with you.
Hmm.
The movie plays a lot with that, and really well done. It was actually it's another one of those examples of a horror film I'd love to see as a stage play one day.
Okay.
That'd be kind of
Yeah.
fun. Another one I want to bring attention to because frankly, this one was decades in the making. The guy who originally worked on this project died before it got a chance to be finished. There's a film that just got released, I think this year or last year, called The Primevals. This is a Full Moon production, and
Okay.
it was championed by David Allen, who was a stop motion animator who worked on The Howling. He worked on a lot of big projects in the early 80s,
Nice.
but then he went to work with Full Moon and he worked on stuff like the Subspecies franchise. He basically did stop motion work for a lot of them. Well, he made this film, The Primevals, which was kind of like you could say like his love letter to Harryhausen,
Okay.
about a archaeological expedition to find the Yeti. The film, but unfortunately, David Allen died after principal photography was done with the actors. But unfortunately, he died before he could get to work on the special effects.
Hmm.
So the project was shelved for like the longest time until uh, Charles Band, bless this man, he said, "We need this. It's not right that this is unfinished." So he actually put forth a shit ton of money to get the post production and the special effects done on it to get it released. And even better is that it's done in the classic David Allen stop motion style. So it really does have the great Harryhausen effect, like where you see a Yeti pick it up, it's very obviously a Barbie doll kind of thing. But it felt, and because of the fact that the actors all shot their stuff back in the early 90s, there's a nice sense of cohesion. It really does feel like this was a movie that was made during like the heyday of Full Moon, but it was released
Hmm.
recently because they only finished it till now. But I think but if everyone who loves Full Moon, loves Charles Band, and loves that kind of film, I urge y'all to watch it because a lot of love and basically a man's passion. They never
Yeah.
got a chance to see this to fruition. So I think it's kind of important to give this
The
one an audience.
Primevals. Yeah.
Yeah, The Primevals, it just showed up on Shutter now because it just released recently.
Nice. Yeah, I gotta look that
Yeah.
up.
And as far as anything recent, I actually just finally sat down and watched Apartment 7A finally.
Oh, yeah.
The Rosemary's Baby prequel.
Hmm. Hmm.
Yeah. I was very much delighted. I was very, very delighted by it.
I haven't seen that one yet. I want to check it
Yeah.
out. I can't lie. just not a huge fan of Rosemary's Baby.
Neither am I,
So,
actually.
yeah, that one didn't really stick out as like, I'm gonna see it, but I definitely want
Yeah.
to. And especially now, if you're saying, usually I feel like your opinion on movies tends to line up with mine.
I think well, actually I think the reason why I'm not so fond of Rosemary's Baby is that I feel like Rosemary as a character is feels more like a trophy. I don't feel she has an identity of her own. It
Yeah.
feels like
Yeah.
everything is happening to her, and I don't feel like she is in a position where she has control over it. Now, granted, a lot of the elements of the horror is the idea that she has no control over her body or her autonomy, but I feel like Rosemary as a character is someone that I couldn't really give myself to in order to understand her plight. Whereas I feel Apartment 7A, because it's about a woman who injured herself on and wants to be a dancer on Broadway. Well, because Rosemary's Baby is about her husband being an asshole, basically selling her like a veal to get what he wants,
Hmm.
which is a horror in and of itself. And again, I get why people love the movie because it does represent a type of horror that I know women definitely go through, where the idea that they don't have their own life and it's pretty much being given away by people outside of her own control. I get that. But in this case, it's about someone who is trying to keep hold of her life, who is trying to maintain what she wants. And she falls in that apartment building with the same people. And it's about the idea of how far there comes a point when she is fully aware of what's going on, and there's a wonderful bit of conflict where she is left to ponder, how far am I willing to go to get what I want.
Okay. Yeah.
So
I gotta
there's a
I gotta look
wonderful,
that up.
yeah, it stars Julia Garner, who's going to be in The Wolfman next year.
Right,
So
right. I like
yeah,
her. She's awesome.
yeah, she's really fucking good. And Diane Wiest stands in for Ruth Gordon
Okay.
in this one.
Okay.
And I never knew that she was capable of giving a horror performance like this, but she gives it.
Right on.
Well, yeah, her and Kevin McNally, who most people know as Mr. Gibbs from the Pirates of the Caribbean movies,
Hmm. Hmm.
who is reliably great. So now
Okay.
that one, you don't have to love Rosemary's Baby to enjoy this one.
Okay.
I'll give it that.
Good to
That's
know. Good to
the
know.
critique. In a way, it's kind of going with the wonderful spate of uh women's autonomy slash giving birth to Satan movies that we've had this year. The wonderful spate of those we've had this year with Immaculate and The First Omen.
Both
So
so good. So good.
yeah, and now you have this third one coming in. So now we have a great triumvirate of um, amazing meditations on female autonomy and giving birth to the devil. All three, all wonderful.
Nice. Nice.
Yeah. So that's kind of nice. Actually, that is nice that we kind of have that wonderful little trend going on. So,
Yeah.
all right. Okay. Obviously we've alluded to it. So for everyone, stay tuned. We are going to be back to reconvene to talk about something a bit more closer to home. We are going to talk specifically about trailers in the time to come. So if you enjoyed this, stay tuned. And in the meantime, where can people find you?
Let's see. I feel like every time I'm on here, it's a different answer. It's
Well, it's good to keep
different
people updated.
answer.
Yeah, because I myself actually I only about a month ago got rid of my Twitter. So
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
yeah,
Got to get rid of
yeah. So
that.
I'm on Blue Sky now, and it's been wonderful.
Blue Sky is great. I don't think I was able to get Fangoria, so I like to go by Fangoria with a PH instead of an F.
Yeah.
On Instagram, I'm Fangoria underscore cosplay. I don't
Hmm.
think on Blue Sky I was able to get Fangoria, so I believe it's Fangoria, but with a zero as the O.
Yeah, I think that's what it was.
Yeah.
Yeah, make sure to put a link to that specifically for
Yeah.
that. And I know we were also talking about the idea of us maybe doing a live on Scener for shits and giggles, getting blitzed and watching something. I think we talking about that.
I would love to. I'm so down.
Yeah, we have to call it drunk stream.
Well, I do have friends that have pointed out that especially if I'm drinking and watching a particularly bloody slasher, I have this cackle that comes out that just takes over the whole the whole party.
Okay, well, we have to make it a point to like continue that to start something for the next year.
I would love to.
Because I have a feeling in the times to come we will be consuming copious amounts of alcohol in order to numb us from the torments to which we were going to have to endure. So All right, so stay tuned, everybody. We got a lot of fun stuff coming up on the horizon, especially part 2, where we talk about trailers. And in the meantime, if you wish to delve into the dark bowels of human imagination, ask yourself the simple question: what's in the podcast?
Thank you for joining us on this edition of What's in the Podcast. If you find yourself hungry for more deep cuts into the gloriously morbid and macabre, you can also find us on TikTok, Bluesky, and YouTube at Narcotic Casserole. You can also follow us on Instagram at Narcotic Casserole 25. Follow us if you dare.